Today is going to be like a different kind of video. I wanted to talk about the apparent suicide of David Wilcock. I mean, it would be easy for me to assume that everyone that comes across this knows who David Wilcock is, but that may not necessarily be true. So, for those who don't know who he was a UFO researcher, writer. He was pretty well known, in the what you would call it, this, spiritual community, new age fields and all that stuff. So apparently, I think it was the 21st of April, somewhere around 10:44 a.m. There was some kind of 911 call about someone in distress, and supposedly, from the information that I got off the internet, is that this police responded, and as they got there, there was a person with a gun, which was supposedly David Wilcock. And as soon as they got there and approached him or something, the narrative that is being given is that he ended his life. There's a lot of speculation going around, all kinds of people talking about different things. There's the talks that he was in a lot of legal battles with different people, that Gaia channel, the New Age channel that does all kinds of stuff on YouTube. I guess he was going through some sort of like what the Gemini AI thing when Google was saying, contentious legal divorce. And all kinds of stuff like that going on in his life. So who knows really what was going in his mind. And there's a lot of people saying that he wouldn't kill himself and this and that, but if there were witnesses to what happened, which I'm assuming there were, outside of police perhaps. Keep in mind, I don't know all the details, guys. It's still a little fresh information. They're still investigating and stuff, but someone called 911, right? Because the guy was having some sort of mental crisis outside his apartment building, house, whatever it was, the place in Boulder, Colorado. And then when this sheriff got there, they're saying that he killed himself. So before everybody begins saying that he would never kill himself and this and that, it seems that that's what happens. That's what happens. It looks pretty straightforward, especially if people have witnessed what happened, right? If there were witnesses, you can't create some sort of weird conspiracy theory. And I hate using that terminology. You know what I think about these things. If the guy really was going through all kinds of psychological problems, legal problems, with other people, including his ex-wife, things can make people do stuff like this sometimes if they don't have the strength that is necessary to handle and deal with it. So who knows? Maybe he just was in a dark place at the wrong time and things escalated to the point that he just did it. I don't know. I'm not here to speculate on the reasons why he may have taken his own life, right? But you never know what's happening in people's private lives. Everything may seem okay on the surface. And this is why I always say that discernment is really important for people to have when it comes down to these things, because there is plenty of people out here on this platform and other places on the internet playing a character, performing, wearing a mask, as if everything is hunky-dory and everything is perfect and everything is fine, and then something like that happens, right? So we don't know what's happening in people's personal private lives. So we may have this concept and idea that everything is okay because that's what we perceive from the performance act, the wearing the mask thing, right? But then, stuff like this happens. So now, if there were no witnesses outside of the police that showed up at this place, well, then it could be considered a little sus. That's all I'm gonna say. When it comes down to people that are involved with these things and people that are known, right? They may have all kinds of they may be privy to all kinds of information from whistleblowers, people connected to these fields of, paranormal, ufology, spirituality, secret technologies that the government may have. And there is this talk that he was involved in some sort of research that was being done, I don't know by who though, on free energy or some stuff like that. So if there are no witnesses to this, then yes, that should be cause for concern, and it should definitely be investigated, and people should be demanding that this is thoroughly investigated. Because then, yes, it is strange. And the other thing is that apparently he had a live stream on the 19th where he talked about, he said something about what he thought about suicide on this live stream, supposedly. I don't know. I haven't watched the live stream. I haven't seen anything from David Wilcock for quite some time, because years ago I stopped following him based on some of the things that he was talking about that to me, it just didn't vibe, didn't sound right. And I was like, you know what? I think this guy is going off the beaten path at this point. That's my opinion, though, which I am entitled to. I mean, yeah, look at the stuff that he did with Gaia and that guy Corey Good, with all that stuff that we're talking about, blue avian aliens and all kinds of crazy, absurd stuff. I don't know. It just sounded too much for me. And I am a pretty open-minded person, but so I stopped following his stuff years ago. But I've been following this kind of stuff for a very long time. Goes way back to the Project Camelot gays, Carrie Cassidy and Bill Ryan. When they were interviewing all these people like Dan Burrish, Jordan Maxwell. The list of people that they interviewed is huge. Back in the glory days of YouTube, if you wanted to do real truth seeking and research things like the unknown paranormal things, ufology, extraterrestrial, anything related to these topics, spirituality, free energy, you name it. That was the place he would go to. Was the Project Camelot web. They had a website. They probably still do. But then, Bill Ryan and Carrie Cassidy, they ended up splitting up later on, and they went their own ways. I think Carrie still has the Project Camelot thing going for where she does the stuff herself. But yeah, I stopped following that stuff, years ago. And same thing with the David Wilcock stuff. But I find it weird and strange that this happened out of nowhere. And supposedly on his live stream, he was claiming, when he was talking about suicide, he said that he would never do something like that. Supposedly he said that on his live stream. I don't know. I don't know though if that's the case, because I have not watched the live stream myself. Like I said, I haven't watched anything from this guy in a very, very long time at this point. But yeah, that's there's something strange going on here. Um, but maybe he did, maybe he did off himself. Who knows? Um, there's talks about all kinds of cyberbullying going on and things like that, and he was under a lot of pressure because of all these legal battles that he was having, and so yeah. Again, like I said, if there were no witnesses to this outside of the police that arrived at the scene when this whole thing happened, then yes, it's strange to say the least. You would think that if the police showed up there, which they did, according to the stuff that I read on the internet, they have these cameras on them. So they probably have footage of the whole thing. That's why I say, before people start saying that it wasn't suicide, you know, perhaps you're wrong. Perhaps that's what it was, and that's all there is to it. Now, that's not to say that what pushed him to that point, if that was the case, was all kinds of things that shouldn't have been done to him, right? The powers that be don't mess around, guys. That's the thing. If you start provoking these people in any way through anything that you do, and you're a public figure, you're asking for trouble, if you ask me. Right? We can come to this platform and talk about all kinds of things, but when people start like revealing things, talking about names, and doing certain things that go against the status quo that the people in power are so desperate to preserve, and they will go to any lengths to do it. And this is not a conspiracy theory. I mean, look at all these scientists and even people in the military that have been disappearing recently. There are so many. Finally, now the government decided to do something, and they're like opening all kinds of different investigations about it. But how many people had to disappear? Literally disappear. These people, nobody knows where these people are. Bodies have not been found, right? It's just bizarre. So there's weird stuff going on, guys. There is weird stuff going on. And yeah, that's what's happening. People are disappearing. And these are people that were like doing all kinds of like serious research into all kinds of stuff that when you begin to look into this, you're going to see that something is off here. Something is definitely off. So, who knows? Maybe David was involved in some of these things with someone, and then they created this whole concept idea of all this cyberbullying and all this other stuff to operate as some sort of like facade for them to do something else. But I will not discount the fact that maybe it's just what it was, and there's no reason to be creating, other ideas here around this. We're gonna have to wait for more information to come out, to get some clarification on this, to see, if it was a legit thing like they claim it was, or if there's something more to it than they're letting it out. But like I said, you never know what's going on a personal, on a person's personal private life. There could be all kinds of things happening, and there are so many men out there right now that are ending their own lives because of these social pressures and things like, divorce is ruining their lives and stuff like that. It's happening, guys. Just go look at the data. Nobody talks about these things. But it's a thing. Just look at the data and you will see. There are a lot of men out there experiencing all kinds of crises. So you never know what would push a person to the brink of doing something like that. It happens. It's unfortunate. And it's just a tragic part of what can happen in a person's life. It's their journey. And, we have free will. And I'm not advocating for things like this at all. But, that's the beauty of free will. If you feel it ain't worth it anymore, you're free to do that kind of thing, Like I said, I'm not advocating for it, though. I would never do something like that myself. But yeah, it's crazy, So that's my take on the whole David Wilcock thing. And hopefully that doesn't become a new trend with some of these people that are involved in these fields of research and things like that. But we should keep our eyes open and stuff. See where all these investigations go with the government trying to find out what happened to this, scientists that are disappearing and people in high positions in the military. Well, what's happening to these people? Where are they? Because like I said, they've disappeared. Bodies have not been found. So what's the deal here? What's going on? I'm telling you guys, I've been talking about this for a while. There's some weird stuff going on here. We don't know what's going on. We don't have the whole picture. A lot of things are being kept from us. The hidden hand operates in nefarious ways. That's for sure. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Like I said, different kind of video. I found out about these news yesterday and I was like, wow, that's crazy. So if you like the channel, don't forget to click the like button, share, subscribe. Helps the channel grow and all that good stuff. And I will catch you all on the next one. Be safe. Take care. Until next time, my friends.